Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content, and if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Finch Knife Co. 1929. Really interesting knife that kind of blends together your traditional pocket knives with your more modern pocket knives. We're going to talk about how they've accomplished that in this model here in just a sec. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. You can check out the link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Alright, let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. This particular model is not large, not at all. Overall length is coming in at about 6 inches on the dot. Blade length is coming in, it's actually under 2.5 inches on the blade length. So that'll solve some issues legally for some people in some areas. Cutting edge is coming in at about 2.35, maybe 2.4 if you want to stretch it. So there you go. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat 1 and Rat 2. You can see here that the 1929 is actually quite a bit smaller even than the Rat 2. So there you go. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3? There we go. Again, even the smaller Para 3 is still dwarfing it by quite a bit. And last but not least, let's go ahead and do the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Mini Griptilian, which again is actually quite a bit larger on the Finch Knife Co. 1929. So there you go. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. We'll get out my tools real quick. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the description. I'm going to guess that that pivot is a T8, which is usually the case. Alright, and by the way, you can buy these knives. I will link this guy and Finch knives in general right down in the description so that you can go take a look. They have a few different forms. By the way, yes, the pivot is absolutely a T8, and then your body screws I'm not going to check because I can tell those are going to be T6. There's likely another screw right underneath this plate right here that attaches to the standoff, so you are going to have some excess hardware probably one additional screw on each side. So you've got 3 for the scales, or the overlays, whatever you want to call them. And then there's probably one hidden underneath. And then you've got the 2 pocket clip screws and the pivot assembly. Not insane. They are T6, so be careful while you're taking it apart so that you don't strip anything out, because that is super duper frustrating. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here that yeah, it's about the same thickness. I mean, some people might say that's thick for a tiny knife. Whatever size, it's just maybe so. You could say that it's actually just a teeny tiny bit thicker actually than the Spyderco Para 3. So you could say that. For me, it's not much of a bother, but it might be for some people. Length and height up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3. You can see here that it's really not cumbersome in this. From this angle, it's not super tall, it's not super long, so any frustrations with thickness, in my opinion, is made up for by the fact that it's just not a large object. What are we looking at for materials? In this case, I think we're looking at the denim micarta, which I gotta say really drives home the whole kind of traditional looking element to it. I really like that. I also like the crest that's been inlaid in there, and it glows. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. And I also like the steel bolster look. I really like this, and while the steel is going to add some weight to this guy, it's really not that crazy because the object itself is just not very big. And then you've got, what's the blade steel? My favorite, 154 cm. I just love that. That's great. So, internally, you can get my flashlight down in the description. Internally, you can see that there's no milling. I'm not sure that it really needs it. So there you go. It is what it is. And then I guess we should measure blade stock thickness before we weigh it. I don't think the blade stock thickness is going to be anything too crazy. See if I can. I might have to actually deploy it to get a good reading on it. And there we go. There you go. Not a super thick blade. Let's go ahead and weigh it here real quick. Weight on the Finch 1929. Just reset that real quick for you guys. Bam. Okay, 3.1 ounces. It's over the ounce and inch mark, given the size of it, right? But it's close to what I call ultralight weight, which means the weight is approaching a point where I consider it to be trivial personally. If you want my opinion handling it, I don't think you're going to have an issue carrying this knife no matter who you are or what you like to carry, right? It's a little bit thicker than you might expect for a tiny little knife, or not super tiny. The presence is actually larger than you might think. Khakis, jeans, right? I mean, truthfully, you're even approaching the point where athletic shorts may be kind of, right? I mean, there's better choices for athletic shorts, but regular pants, you're going to be just fine. It's really not going to be an issue. All right, let's go ahead and move into the next part of this. I love how this looks. This looks like, you know, minus the flipper tab, it really looks like your old school Barlow knife, right? Especially when the blade comes out. This sort of clip point, this fat clip point we've got at the ends that we see on, you know, it's like every grandpa's, all of our, you know, like just that, if you dig around in an office drawer or shop drawer, you know, that belong to your dad or your grandpa, it's likely that you're going to come across a pocket knife with a blade that's similar to the one on this knife. And that's cool. I really like how that looks. I think the way that they've done, I mean, like, the gap work here, or the inlay work is great, or the overlay work, whatever you want to call that. It's great. The micarta looks fantastic. Let's go ahead and show off that glow logo here real quick. Get it nice and charged up for you guys. Hang on. Turn that up to maximum power, over 9,000. All right. And let's take a look there. Yeah, that's great. Very cool. I like that that's there. Does it offer much of a tactical advantage in any situation? Not really. If a sudden burst of light causes you to drop your knife in total darkness and you're in a forest, that crest will shine bright enough for you to find it in that moment. I'm being sarcastic. I just think it's neat. Just as somebody who finds interest in pocket knives in general, and when there are funny little elements or interesting elements, right? Then yeah. And the nice thing is that this is done so well. It's laid in there really, really well, and you know it doesn't cause an issue. It's not raised up, or it's not going to cause an issue while you're using it. I think that's nice, and I think it looks nice too. Absolutely. These are steel, and the edges are nicely knocked down. Truthfully, there's not much in the way of ergonomic lines, so I'm not going to tell you guys that this is a masterpiece. And for me, this is a 3-finger position knife, so I can't get a full grip on it. That's kind of a thing for me where I'm like, if I'm going to carry it, I have to be able to get a full grip. But I think a lot of people, in fact, I think most people are just not bothered by that. People who are looking for a smaller knife are probably expecting that, so that's fine. The nice thing is that the flipping action is just absolutely excellent. While the flipper tab does have jimping all over the place, it's not super aggressive. So even when you're holding this thing, I'm not going to say it's biting into my hand or anything like that. This is obviously not a knife that's meant to be taken out and used really, really hard in the wilderness all the time. This is a general, you know, day-to-day knife. Just something you keep in your pocket as an item of convenience. The D10 is tuned very well. The action is extremely smooth, and it is running on bearings. Takes a little tiny bit of encouragement to get that blade to go back into the handle, but believe me when I say it is smooth. It's about what I expect for a knife of this caliber in this price range. In fact, I'd say it's really good. The action's actually really satisfying. It's funny almost to see a knife that it looks so like it's from a different time period, right? And then you pull on that flipper tab and the blade deploys. I mean, it's kind of fun. It's fun just because the look is so different. I think that's the emphasis that I'm going to put here on this knife, is that this knife looks so different than anything else, or it is so different from other things that are on the market. Not in terms of fun. I mean, like, there's lots of bolster locks out there, right? There's lots of flippers, lots of knives in micarta and 154 cm. But the final form that it takes is different than what we see out there. It's unique, it's fun, it's interesting, right? And that's cool. I appreciate that. I also appreciate how he puts his name right here. It's just classy. He doesn't put it up here. It's just right there. And on the other side, he keeps everything nice and tightly tucked down there. 154 cm, model 1929. I say he. I've talked to the gentleman who runs Finch Knife Co. out of Stillwell, Kansas, which is cool because I'm from Kansas. That's kind of why I wanted to look at these. These knives are foreign made, however. They are not actually made here. But the company is run in Kansas, and the guy seems to be a super duper nice guy, and he offered to send these out, this and some other Finch knives, for me to take a look at. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, flipping action is great. There is no double clutch. Bearings feel nice. Surfaces feel nice and smooth on the inside, nice and even. I need to get it all the way down there. But yeah, the blade, I love it. It's actually got horizontal lines. Now, I'm not going to tell you, a lot of times when I see these horizontal lines, I think, you know, like Riot, that's generally when you see that with Riot, it means it's a hand rub satin finish. Given the price, I'm going to assume that that's not the case here. That's probably done by machine, and it's pretty good. It's not at the same level as, you know, a $400 Riot, but it's pretty good. And honestly, the blade looks good. If the blade had had those, you know, typical satin machine lines on it that are vertical, I think it would have cheapened it up. For whatever reason, it's just a nice extra little classy touch. It looks good. It really does. Blade is fully flat ground, which is fantastic. There's nothing that's going to get in the way while you're using this blade. Nice and wide out here. The blade comes down to a reasonably thin edge. In fact, I'd say it's pretty thin. I think people who use this are going to find that it's very there's a lot of satisfaction in driving this blade through simple materials like, you know, envelopes, cardboard, things like that, right? No jimping up here. I don't think it really needs it, but what I do appreciate is that they knock these corners down. That's nice. It's nice to not see or feel edges that feel unfinished. As it should be the case, the only sharp edge that's on the knife is the cutting edge, which is great. And the final cutting bevel does look fantastic. There's a little bit of a sharpening choil there, so that's great. Love it. These two little extra lines here on the bolster, they're not really doing anything, but I appreciate that they're there. It just adds just a little tiny bit more flair. You know, it's not too busy, but it's busy enough that it looks nice. I like it. Moving back here, we do not have a lanyard hole, which is fine because I don't care about that, and I have a feeling that the vast majority of people watching this probably don't care about lanyard holes either. But for people who do care about lanyard holes, I'm sorry, there's not one on here. A couple of standoffs, that's just fine. And then the pocket clip is very simple, popsicle stick style clip, but it goes right with the design because the whole thing looks like a popsicle stick with a blade and a flipper tab. But yeah, it looks fine. And there is that sort of continuous rise. There's no dip, but that's fine. It's nice and rounded off at the edge, so it's not sharp. There's a continuous rise, so it'll rise to meet the thickness of your pocket. And it carries reasonably deep. There's really nothing wrong with the clip. It's easy in and out because the surface of the micarta is smooth, so that's fantastic. This is steel, so no need for a steel lock bar insert, and the overlay acts as the over travel, so that kind of takes care of itself. Lockup on this guy is fairly early. You can see how much thicker actually the frame is than the blade. And I'll admit, the entire thing probably could have been a little tiny bit thinner, and it would have been just fine. They could have thinned up the micarta overlays, and they could have thinned up the frame, and it probably would have been just that much easier to carry. They might have actually shaved another 1/4 ounce off of it, but it's really okay in the form that it takes. I kind of like sometimes extra meatiness has a charm to it if it's not overboard, right? We're on the line where it's like, that's kind of a meaty boy, but it's not crazy thick, right? But yeah, could it have been might it have been a little friendlier if it was just a little tiny bit thinner? Perhaps. But it's fine the way that it is. Anyways, locking up at what appears to be about 25% or so. There is no blade play in the up and down or left or right. None of that. Absolutely none of it. And centering is dead on, which is fantastic. There's no detent lash, anything like that. It's solid. Where's the stop pin? It's actually riding with the blade. You can see it moving there, so it is internal. And I like that because it's a lot like the external stops. It braces on the frame. So that's nice. I like that. There's really not a ton to complain about. I think that, you know, people will find, you know, the frustrating areas of this knife. Number one, I mean, it's sort of this, it's taking on a classic look, right? So it's not like he's like, whoops, I forgot to add ergonomic lines. No. I forgot to mention that there is a nice cutout on the frame for the lock bar. Really like that. That's fantastic. And it does offer a little bit of a guide as far as like where to put your index finger to hold on to it. It's amazing how many designs just miss that, or they just don't care about it, right? It's nice. As that lock bar wears over, you're always going to have access to it. It's really, really nice. Now, because of the design, though, because of what was trying to be accomplished here, it's not amazing ergonomically. I mean, it has a handle, and you can hold on to it, but you better hold on to it. I wouldn't be using this knife in a wet or slippery environment or any situation where you might drop it, right? it's smooth and there's not ergonomic lines. It's a little bit thicker probably than it needs to be, but it's nothing crazy. There's a lot of hardware. That's the case with any design that's using this overlay construction where they have an extra screw holding a standoff in. Not insane. Not really, it's not that big of a deal. Gosh, other than that, what am I going to complain about here? I don't know, guys. I think this is a cool knife. I really do. And what's the price on it? Well, like I said, you can pick this up. I've got links right down in the description where it should still be available. This guy comes in about 120 bucks. So we're looking at steel, denim micarta, and 154 cm, and it is not made in the United States. Is that the best price in the world? No, it's not the best price in the world, but I also don't really have an issue with it. I mean, people are so quick to reduce any knife to what materials are being used, and that's not a good way to decide whether or not, you know, I mean, you have your own personal value system, but if your personal value system is just, here are the materials, here's what I think it should be worth, your system's flawed. You have to consider exactly what it took to create the item, right? How much work went into it. The end result here is a pretty polished product. I mean, the blade looks good. They were trying to achieve this whole, you know, old school meets modern element, and they did that. The micarta looks great. The transition from micarta to steel looks great. The flipping action is fantastic. It's very satisfying. And by the way, the pocket clip, I believe, just knocked my flashlight over. Yeah, the pocket clip's titanium. So there is some titanium on there. On top of that, I love 154 cm. People are going to go, 154 cm, you can get that. And under, like, just totally ignoring what I said about, you know, not reducing knives to, or the value of a knife to the materials used. Listen, while you can find knives in 154 cm for under $100, you'll also find that custom makers whose knives, the finished products, cost well over $1,000, you'll find them using 154 cm / CPM 154 often, right? So, again, I mean, unless we're looking at something like 420J or a junker, an ultra junker steel, right? Your 8CR, 13 MOV, your 7CR, all that stuff, right? No, we're looking at a nice composition. In this case, yeah, don't reduce, you know, this knife's value to what you've seen out there that comes in the same steel. Because this knife has a lot of elements that you might not find in an $80 knife or $90 knife, right? I think I would have been really, really pumped to see this thing come in at $100. It's 20 bucks more than that. It's like I always say, everything on earth could be $20 less and it would make us happy, right? Everything could then be $20 less than that. So where's the line? Why do I think that? I don't know. My gut instinct says, if this was $100 or $99.95, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. It's at 120. That's pretty good. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Would I pay that for this knife? Yeah, I think I would. I think people who decide to go ahead and pay that money for this knife are going to be happy with it. Is this a recommendable knife all the way around? Yeah, it is. I think this is good. It's got a couple of quirks, right? It's not going to be for everybody, but generally speaking, if you spend 120 bucks on this knife and you like how it looks, are you going to be satisfied with its quality and the materials used? Yeah, absolutely. And that Finch logo thing that glows, you don't need it, but it's neat. It definitely is. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. Like I said, you can check out Finch knives right down in the description. I'll make sure and link this guy specifically. There are a few different versions of this, so check out what all they've got going on. Thanks again to Finch Knife Co. for sending this and the other models along. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.